Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're sort of tearing up the standard physics textbook. We're looking at a source that dares to rewrite the history of the universe itself. We're launching into a truly foundational discussion, a complex alternative cosmology that challenges everything we think we know about universal origin and, well, the genesis of the greatest creator.
That's a perfect setup. Our listener has handed us material that isn't just offering, minor tweaks to science. It's providing a complete, rigorously detailed system. It critiques the Big Bang model head-on, and then it constructs an alternative rooted in ancient Chinese wisdom principles from the I Ching and the Tao Te Ching.
So our mission here is really just to unpack the logic.
Exactly. To fully grasp the internal logic of this opposing view, no matter how radical it feels, and to follow its step-by-step creation narrative.
Absolutely. To guide you through this, we've structured the dive into two major parts. First, we have to understand the core logical failures these sources identify within the Big Bang theory. And second, we'll walk through the proposed alternative. This highly ordered process, moving from a state of ultimate nothingness Wuji to the formation of Taiji and the eventual birth of the greatest creator.
A huge idea.
Okay, let's unpack this enormous idea. We'll begin with the story we all know. If you rewind to the 1920s, the Mount Wilson telescope gave us crucial data. Distant galaxies are moving away from us, and the further away they are, the faster they're moving.
Right, and our sources acknowledge these observations, but they point out that certain scientists at the time made a leap of faith. They naturally concluded that the universe began with a single massive explosion.
And the argument here is that conclusion is flawed from the very start.
Fundamentally flawed. Because, they argue, observational data is always, without exception, relative. The core claim is that the appearance of expansion is just a product of our current location in time and space.
So how do the source materials demonstrate this? I know they use some really effective analogies.
They do, and they're powerful because they're so simple. Take the train analogy. If you're standing at station A and you see a train leaving, you conclude it's receding. But that same train is, at the same moment, undoubtedly approaching station B.
So to an observer at station B, it's converging, not expanding away.
Precisely. If the universe is a closed, cyclical system, our current observation of recession is only half the story.
And there's that geographic analogy, too, which really highlights our perceptual bias.
It's a great one. The idea of standing in Oslo and thinking people in Cape Town are head down. Your view is purely defined by your specific orientation. It's not an absolute truth. The source sums this up with a wonderful ancient quote. Standing on a certain point, to rashly assert everything, is necessarily horizontal view forms a ridge, lateral view forms a peak, far and near, high and low, all different.
You can't map the entire mountain range from one spot on the trail.
Exactly. You can't deduce the absolute structure of the universe from a single relative perspective.
So this implies that what we're seeing, this expansion, is just a cyclical phase. The sources claim our Earth universe is just a microparticle inside a larger cyclical structure, a Taiji ellipse.
Yes. And within that ellipse, distances expand when you're near the short axis, but they have to shrink when you approach the long axis.
Which leads to a pretty direct challenge to science.
A major challenge. They assert that in the future, say 1 billion years from now, we will observe these same galaxies approaching us at increasing speeds. If that happens, what explanation will science offer then? It suggests the Big Bang is just a momentary snapshot, not the whole film.
Okay, so beyond the relativity problem, the critique gets into the sheer physical impossibility of it all. The idea that it requires no external force.
Right, and this is where the source lays down a rule from observing nature, cosmic law. It dictates that any explosion or creation event needs an external force. An egg needs heat to hatch. An embryo needs nutrients.
Simple cause and effect.
Simple cause and effect. If massive events like earthquakes and volcanoes need solar energy and celestial gravity, how could the Big Bang, the explosion of everything, happen with no external force? The source asks, if things just spontaneously explode, why haven't all the nuclear weapons in storage just detonated on their own?
That's a fair point. But let's say we suspend disbelief. Let's assume the universe could spontaneously explode. The sources say the aftermath just doesn't work.
It immediately becomes contradictory. We see these highly ordered systems, the solar system, the Milky Way, all working on curved orbital paths. If the Big Bang happened, you have the debris problem. If the fragments just flew out in straight or chaotic lines, no organized systems could form.
And if they follow the curved paths we see today,
Well, the sheer energy needed for that initial explosion would logically enforce straight chaotic movement. The force would be too great for gravity to immediately bend those paths into stable orbits.
There's also a physics contradiction in there about mass and speed. That one's a little tricky.
It is, but it's a critical point. For a debris field to become a stable solar system, fragments need different speeds. But if small fragments like Earth and large ones like the Sun moved at wildly different speeds after an explosion, Earth would have been flung out of the system long ago.
Okay, but what if they all moved at the same speed?
Well, that's the other horn of the dilemma. If they all moved at the same uniform speed, which is a likely outcome of a single blast, then Earth and the Sun would just run abreast.
Anemic.
Meaning Earth wouldn't orbit the Sun. They'd just fly side by side forever, maintaining the same distance. There'd be no difference in velocity for gravity to work with to create an orbit. The ordered systems we see just can't be reconciled with the initial conditions of a massive unforced explosion.
That is a very comprehensive takedown. So if chaos doesn't work, we have to turn to systems that prioritize order. Which brings us to the core of this alternative cosmology.
Yes, and we have to establish cosmic order as the non-negotiable prerequisite. The sources argue order is inherent in everything. They use the example of Mendeleev and the periodic table. Decades before elements were discovered, he predicted them, calculated their weights. This proves, they say, that everything in the universe has laws and order.
So any apparent disorder is just our ignorance of the law.
That's the idea. Apparent disorder only exists because we have not yet found the law and order.
So if order is paramount, what is the ultimate starting point before any of this order manifests? We're talking about Wuji, the non-ultimate.
Wuji is the cosmic antecedent, the state before anything. It's often talked about philosophically, but here it's treated as a physical, cosmological state.
How does the source even define such a paradoxical state?
Through absence, really. No inside or outside, no large or small, no boundaries, no reality, no void, no matter, and crucially, no spirit. Yet at the same time, it's everything and nothing. It holds the potential for everything, but it's all perfectly canceled out.
And understanding this helps decode some really difficult ancient texts.
It resolves the paradox. The sources point to the Diamond Sutra, with its famously tricky phrases about the Buddha's words being neither to be grasped nor spoken of. If you understand that Wuji is the possession of all things in a state of nothingness, then you get why ultimate reality exists outside our normal, dualistic language.
This concept of Ouija also forces a radical shift away from our everyday ideas of space and time. Let's start with space.
Right, we think of space as an empty box, but the source, referencing Einstein, says space depends on matter. The space of Wuji is dynamic. They use this great analogy of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, trapped in the golden symbol.
When he gets bigger, the symbols get bigger.
And when he shrinks, they shrink. If the point of matter disappears, the space associated with it also disappears. So since Wuji is a state of no matter, it's also a state of no defined space.
And that connects directly to the nature of time.
It does, because fundamentally, time requires movement. Cell division, decay, planetary orbits. We measure time by these movements. If you slow or stop movement, time slowed or disappears. The refrigerator analogy is perfect. Meat stops decaying because cellular movement is radically slowed. Since there was no movement in the perfect balance of Wuji, there was no time.
Which reframes some big problems in modern science, doesn't it?
It does. The source argues this is why quantum mechanics faces the uncertainty principle.
Yeah.
It's because the underlying assumption is that time is uniformly flowing, which in this cosmology is fundamentally wrong.
So we have this ultimate state of potential, Wuji. Motionless, timeless. How does something come from that? How does the greatest consciousness emerge from absolute nothingness?
This transition from Wuji to Taiji, the great ultimate, is the central cosmic event. Wuji contains unformed energy that's constantly moving, but randomly canceling itself out. The birth of Taiji happens when all this random movement accidentally arranges itself into a specific ordered symbol at some arbitrary point.
So it's not a willful act. It's more like a spontaneous geometric convergence, a probability that was bound to happen.
Exactly. When that geometric order clicks into place, all that random energy instantly converges on that one point. It forms a gigantic potential energy arrow-shaped tornado. This Taiji is a unified whole, a vast energy mass. They describe it as a reservoir with the energy of billions of Pacific oceans.
Pure potential power, all focused.
Mm.
And the source is very explicit about what this represents.
They are, the source states. This Taiji is what we generally refer to as the greatest creator. It's not the person of the creator yet, but the spirit of the greatest creator. This energy core is what Laozi called the way, or Tao.
This is where it gets really radical. The consciousness of the greatest creator is generated by this energy. It doesn't come before it.
That is the pivotal claim. The massive clustering of energy at the core of Taiji causes the energy to mutate. It changes state, like water turning to steam. This core becomes a high-energy, specialized, and highly ordered structure. As this structure continually perfects itself, consciousness is generated.
So the greatest creator is the self-perfecting consciousness that results from the laws of physics governing this immense energy concentration.
Precisely. This conscious entity, the greatest creator, having absorbed and organized all that energy, can now begin the journey of purposeful creation. The system now has a mind.
And once that consciousness is born, the creation of the manifest universe begins immediately through duality.
Correct. The energy within Taiji now operates according to that conscious will, like our body obeying our brain. This immediately generates Lianji, the two forms, which is the necessary state for anything to exist.
And the very first duality is?
The conversion of formless energy into formed energy. The sun is the ultimate example of formed energy. This one act creates the foundational opposition, having and non-having. And from that primary duality, everything else we know is derived.
Which means Lianji contains every contradiction in our reality.
Every single one. Void and solid, yin and yang, life and death, good and evil, strong and weak. All the phenomena we see are just manifestations of this primary split, set in motion by the Creator's will.
And this is where we can trace that ancient blueprint from things like the river chart. We go from 2 to 4.
Once Lianji is established, it generates Sixyang, the 4 images. These define space, east, west, south, north, and also the cycle of time, birth, growth, decay, and death.
And from 4 images, we get the 8 trigrams, or Bagua. But the final blueprint, the ultimate secret, is the 64 hexagrams. Let's focus on that number.
This is maybe the most revolutionary part. The sources insist that the 64 hexagrams correspond to 64 fundamental factors of the universe. These are the hidden variables that define and control reality. It moves the I Ching from a system of philosophy into a kind of comprehensive cosmological formula.
So it's suggesting there's a technical mechanism behind what we'd call miracles or magic, a recipe.
That's the key insight. The source explicitly states that all miraculous phenomena, what they call supernatural power, come entirely from understanding the formula of these 64 factors. They even assert that the power demonstrated by figures like Jesus came from mastering the recipe of these factors. So it's not arbitrary intervention, it's a complex but discoverable set of laws.
We've covered so much ground today.
Yeah.
Moving from the flaws of observational physics to a creation story rooted in ultimate order, from a chaotic explosion to an internally generated consciousness.
It's a deeply compelling and integrated system. The argument is that the universe runs on strict discoverable laws. And the whole process starts with energy converging, birthing consciousness, the greatest creator, which then organizes reality through duality and these fundamental factors.
Well, thank you for sharing such rich and foundational sources with us. We hope this framework helps you navigate these complex, ancient-rooted cosmological claims.
It was a pleasure diving in.
We'll leave you with this final thought straight from the source materials. They describe the ultimate outcome of the universal process as coming without coming, going without going. When time and space end, the original form appears. If our current universe is just a single microparticle in an eternal cycle of expansion and contraction, what does that imply about the original form of consciousness, of the greatest creator, before it begins the cycle all over again? Something for you to mull over.